Hey, what's going on guys? Hope everyone will be fine and welcome back to another tutorial. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you about the RESTful API in Laravel. We will create API using Laravel. Alright, so if you guys are not sure what is basically RESTful API, so our RESTful API is an application program interface that uses HTTP requests to get put or post or delete. We have different ways to get the HTTP request. So in our case, you see that we have our server running on the port 8000 with the 127 point, which is the local host, right? So I'm using Postman here. You can install the Postman by using you have to visit the Postman, or let's go to the Postman, and you can install the postman.com and you can download from here. All right, and now you can see that I have my server running and I already added up my HTTP 127.0.0.1, and which is a GET request, and once I send the request, this is going to preview me the same thing which I have running on my browser, because we have running the server, right? So this is basically the meaning of sending the request, which is the GET request, because we are getting the data or getting the server running on our port 8000. We can also explain RESTful API as a representational state transfer. Our RESTful API is also referred to as a RESTful web service. You can use as a service, and for example, if you create an API and you build an API and you want to get results using the other client side, like if I want to get this API using another Angular and use it as a preview or use it as a request from an API using services, which I'm later going to explain you everything. So it's basically the client and the server are independent of each other. So what actually it means that if I have a route, and which includes all the customers' information. So what I'm going to do is to get this request and use it as a service in the other application. You can use it in Angular, you can use in your other like Vue or any other framework that's where you can use as a service, right? So that's actually it's all the meaning. So I think so, rather making it complex for you, let's get started and we can explain you everything on the code, right? So I have already installed my Laravel application, right? So you can simply install that, and I have a lot of videos where I've installed the Laravel, and even in my all including series for the Laravel, right? So let's create our very first API, and the first thing you need to do is to get your .env. You must have your database inside your Laravel _API, and I have already created the database. So let's get into the Laravel, and let's go into the Laravel _API, and I need to delete that table which I already created even though I need to delete every table, right? So let's gonna drop everything which I have already created before, but I want to create everything new for you. So you have to create your name of the database inside your .env, and next thing you need to do is to go inside your you have to create your tables, but before creating tables and migrating it, you need to first add the providers. So app provider, app service provider. So let's use the Laravel here. So use illuminate spot facades schema, right? So let's add the schema inside the boot function. So the schema default string length, and give it the size of 191, right? Okay, so let's create the model first. So let's create a table. For creating the table, I'm using the terminal. Let's close that up, and you need to do is to create the model. Let's create a model. PHP artisan make model. The name of the model in my case should be employee and -m for migration, right? And let's press enter. But before press enter, this is going to create the employees table. So all I'm going to do is to go inside my database migrations, and that's going to create a migration for us. So which should be create employees table. All right. And let's create here the table of type string, and define here name. And let's do the same for the email, which is of type string. It should be email, right? All right, so let's create the integer type for the salary. Let's add the salary. All right, so we added the three main columns for the table of employees. So let's migrate it, right? So PHP artisan migrate, right? So I migrated, and that's going to create the table. So let's going to see in our database. So you see now we have our employees table, including with the users, which is by default created, right? Now, next thing I'm going to do is just close that up, and let's create a controller with the name of so PHP artisan make controller, and that should be employee controller. All right, so I created the employee controller. Let's get into the employee controller, and let's start with our very first API, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, because we are writing an API, there are two ways that you can define in your web.php. The better way is adding the api.php. So let's get into the routes and api.php file, and let's going to write our very first API for the GET request. So I'm using here GET request, and the name of our route, which should be employees, and the name of the controller, which is employee controller, and let's give it the name of the method is get employees. All right, so get employee, and save it, and let's go into your controller app http controllers employee controller. So let's create a here function with the name of get employee, and let's put up here so let's put up here the request. But before doing it, you need to use the model. So use app/employee, which should be capital. All right, so use app/employee, and I'm using here Eloquent, right? So here for doing this, very simple, you just need to return response, which should be JSON response, and I'm going to bring up here the employee colon all for getting all the columns for we are using all for everything which is inside the employee table, right? And because we are using here status code, which is 200 means that a successful, right? Everything is okay, right? So let's get, and I have already explained I'm using Postman for testing my API. You can install it. Now, in order to get this request, I have to use here the get request and /API, and it should be because we have our routes inside our api.php, so you have to use /API. And next thing you need to do here is to add the employees. So let's copy that up and add here employees. Go into the raw, or you can use any pretty, I believe that's going to be, and the request, which is get, let's send it, and I believe this should be an empty array. But before doing it, it's saying your error connection refused. So because we haven't run our server, so let's run our server with the PHP artisan serve, right? I run my server, and now you need to go to your database, and let's add some data in order to test our API. So I'm going to add some data inside the employees. But in case if you want to still send the request, this is going to show you empty array, right? So now our API is working, and you can see everything is working fine for you, right? So status code, which is 200, okay, right? Now let's add the data and check this out. So I'm going to go inside my employees table, and let's add up here John @gmail. This should be the name. So John @gmail.com, and let's add the salary of 500, and let's add another one. All right, so let's add the salary of 600. All right, and I believe let's go it, right? Okay, now I have my data inserted. Now in order to test our API, you need to click on the send, and you can see now we have our ID1 have its on data and ID2 have its on data. All right, so I hope you guys can get an idea of how to use the GET request. All right, now let's get and add another API where we can see the detailed information only about the specific user which have the ID of 1. In order to do that, all you need to do is to first let's give it the get all employees. All right, so let's write another one here, and let's get specific employee. All right, so let's write the route for it. So route colon get, and because we are using here we are finding the specific user, so I have to define here employee and slash, and I need to add the ID because I need to check individual user information, so I have to grab the ID of the specific employee, right? So let's give it the name of the controller, which is the employee controller, and let's add the method with the name of get employee by ID, right? So I'm going to copy this ID and let's bring up here. So public function get employee by ID, and this ID is going to pass inside my controller. All right, so let's grab here $ID, and in order to find the ID inside the Eloquent, all you need to do is to use a find method. So employee find, and find it with the ID, and I'm just adding up a check here, and I just need to check if it's null. So I'm using a method which is underscore null, and if that employee is empty, right, then I need to give it a response, return response of in JSON. So let's add up here a message. So I'm using here the keys and the values. So let's give it the message first. So I'm going to give it the message with the value of employee not found. All right, so employee not found, and I gave it the response of 404, means that there is 404 means the status that not found, right? And in case if we find it, so let's return response of in JSON and set that to be employee, and give it the employee find $ID, and give it the request of 200. All right, so let's get and start and test this out. So the name of my route, which is employee slash with the ID. So what I'm going to do here is remove dash, and let's add the ID which doesn't exist, which is 3, because in my database you see we have only ID1 and ID2. So let's first test with the ID of 3. You see that employee not found, and in case if I add up here /2 and press enter, and you see now we can only grab the result that we needed. So we have information about the ID2. Now in case if I need to review the ID1, and I can easily grab the ID, right? So we can get the detail of the user. Now let's add up a new user, and in order to add the new user, so let's create an route for it. So so add new, add employee. So let's, because we are adding a new employee, so I'm using here post request. So remember, anything where you have to submitting the form, you have to use the post request. So let's add here add employee, and the name of the method should be employee, the controller should be employee controller, and let's give it the name of the method name, which should be add employee. Go inside the controller, so public function add employee. Now because we are adding the employee, I need to add the request, so let's add up here request. All right, and adding the request, so employee, we need to create a new object, so employee colon create. Let's create the all requests, so dollar request dash all. All right, and at the end I need to give it the response, so let's give the response of 200, or you can also give it the response of 200, which 201. So I just need to confirm 201 response code. So the 200 created success status response code indicates that the request has succeeded and has led to the creation of a resource, right? So 201 response I need to add up here. So let's add the response for the add. So I need to pass here employee, and let's give it the code for 201. All right, I hope this is gonna work. So I have created here, that's fine, and it's gonna showing me an error because I haven't put any semicolon at the end. So let's create error inside the postman, right? So in my case I have error the route which is add employee, and it's have the post request. So let's use here post request and /API/add employee. And now inside your params you need to add all the values, right? So we have the name, we have our email, we have our salary, right? All right, so let's add here a name of Sarah, and email should be sarah@gmail.com, and let's add up the salary of 200. All right, and I believe that's fine, right? Let's hit the send request, and it's gonna show up an error. It says, if I go to the preview, it says add username to fillable property to allow mass assignment of app/employee. All right, so I need to do here is you need to go inside your employee.php model, which should be there, right? So basically it's showing up an error here that you have your mass assignment error. So in order to fix that up, all you need to do is to first go inside your model. Let's give it your timestamp to be false, so you don't need to create, because that's by default created. So let's give it for now false. So timestamps equal to false, and I also need to add the fillables, right? For the fillable, you need to define your name of your attribute names, right? Which is name, email, and the salary. All right, saves it, and let's have a try. All right, so I click on this send, and you see now we have our created. So name, email, and salary. And let's go inside your database and check this out. This is going to work. So now we have our new row inserted inside the employees table. As simple as that, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is to let's update the employee data. So update employee. All right, so let's use here the get request, because we are getting the request for the employee. So update employee slash, because we need to update the employee, a specific employee. So I'm using here, passing up here an ID, and let's grab here the controller name, and the name of the method should be update employee, right? So update employee. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and let's define a function here. So public function update employee, and now here inside the update employee, I'm also passing up here a request. So let's give it here a request of this. One thing I forget here, I'm not using here the get request. We have to use here put request. So put request is for the update because we are passing the request as well as including with the ID. So I'm also have to update the request, and plus we need to pass here an ID, right? So I have passed up the ID with the request, and let's write up a code. So first we have to find the ID. So let's grab equal to employee. I'm using here Eloquent. So let's first find the ID which I need to update the data for. So I get the ID, and then I need to check if it exists. So I have to use here a very similar fashion. If it's null, so let's pass here an employee. So if it's null, then just give it the response which I have already added up inside my get employee ID. So I am going to copy this out and let's put up here, right? And in case if we have the data, so $employee equal to all I need to do is to update here. So update, I'm using here update method. So $request dash all right, and let's give it the response of 200, right? So I'm going to copy this and paste here. This 200 means okay, right? So I pass up here a response. So let's check this out, right? So for the update case, I'm using here put request, and I don't need that. I don't need that. Let's update only the salary, right? So salary, let's suppose give it the 100, right? And we need to use the so update employee, and let's first find out the ID which doesn't exist. 5 which doesn't exist. So it says employee controller does not exist. Oh, oops, I forget to bring up the name of the method which I need to define here. So let's give it the update status, update employee, and now test this out. You see employee not found, and let's give it the salary, right? So I just want to update the salary 100 for the employee which exists. So let's give it the /3, and it says undefined function app/http controller /update. So $employee equal to update. Oops, actually I need to do here is $employee dash update. All right. Okay, so dash update, and it should be very much similar to what we have, right? Okay, so let's have a try here and send it. And now you see we have our ID 3 with the salary 100 which I have updated. Let's do it. Let's make it 1000 and send the request, and we have updated and go into our database for the testing, and you see now we have 1000 as a salary for the ID 3. All right, so it's very simple. Let's delete the ID 3, and now we have to write first the API for it. So delete employee, and let's write here the API for the delete. So route : delete. So we're using a request as a delete request, and delete employee. So let's write here the controller name, and let's delete the employee, right? So I'm going to copy this and let's put up here, and public function delete the employee, right? So for deleting the employee, all I need to do is to pass the request with the ID, and find the ID if it exists. So $employee equal to employee, find the ID. Oops, sorry for that. So find the ID if it exists. Same case here, if it exists, so show up the error, and in case if it doesn't, then just simply delete that. So $employee dash delete. So let's use here delete method. So delete it, and let's give it the response of 204, which is no content, right? So return response of null, and give it the response of 204. So 204 means no content, right? So let's first go to our delete request. So define here delete and slash API slash, which I believe in my case is delete employee. So let's grab the delete employee first, define which doesn't exist, and it says 404 not found. Which is fine. Oops, no, it's fine, I believe. Slash API slash, yeah, I forget to bring here an ID, right? So slash ID, because we need to delete the individual employee, right? So let's get and send the request. It says employee not found, and let's delete the user 3, right? So now you see we have null data, right? It means the employee is deleted. And let's grab and click on the browse, and you see now we have our record 3 deleted. All right, so I believe you guys get an idea of using the API, how to use the basic API, and with using that, I'm gonna create an API and use it on our Angular, which is a new series that I'm going to create. So I hope you guys will really enjoy this series, and with the Angular and the combination of Laravel, full stack video, right? So thank you for watching, and please subscribe and share it, and I want to see you for the next time.